Free Golden Eagles for War Thunder. Download the app in the description below.
Hey guys, welcome back to War Thunder and welcome to the T92, albeit this is not the tank we're going to be talking about. We're going straight into the action. We have failed miserably here. Okay, let me give you a rundown. So, we're playing with the big version of Sinai. It's a decent map, I don't like it too much. It has a triangular shape. It doesn't actually work in the normal triangular shape. Everybody goes for Alpha, nobody goes for Charlie. The map is huge, it's vast, it's kind of boring to look at. But it's got nice dust effects, so I guess that kind of works for it. So, today's video is about the M42 Duster. There's no Duster on the screen yet, and there won't be for quite a foreseeable future because we're not actually in the need of playing the Duster. I'm playing the T92, I went for the objective, I went for the capture point, I got a kill, and now I'm pinned down by King Tiger. An SLA to be exact, so he's got a little bit extra horsepower here. I'm just about to repair my engine deck, my track, and I'm trying to do something here, a bit of a stupid Zerg rush, and then I don't know if he fired a smoke shell or somebody else fired a smoke shell, but whatever that happened, managed to save me. And the advantage of using a white camouflage on a desert map means you're a little bit harder to be spotted. The problem is that King Tiger is the least of my problems. There's another tank in the capture point, and I'm being shot at from 3 different perspectives now. I can't return fire. The thing that I can do is proceed to drive forward, which, because of my broken right track, will lead to me driving in a circle. The reason I'm doing this is because I'm angling my internal modules, causing the enemy tanks to fire at already dead components, meaning I don't actually take damage. The reason I did this is to maximize the amount of spawn point gain. And this is something I've shown you with the mouse, so angling your internal components, it can be done in any tank in the game, with the exception of the M42 added in the last patch. Heads up, I will not be making a review on it. I don't actually like it. I think it's a bit weird. It does have a particular playstyle. You might see it in a few games, but an actual review on it will not happen. The thing about the Ontus is, it has the option to research crew replenishment. And that means that you could, lose a crew member and then replace him. The problem is the Ontus has 2 crew members, and as soon as one is taken out, you're dead. So there's literally no point for that upgrade outside of playing arcade battles. Just a fun little thing I found. We're now playing in the F4U-4B. This is the Corsair variant with the cannons, A&M3 cannons, and I've actually really started to like this thing. In the beginning, stock, and not knowing how it plays, not having the feeling for it, the plane was abysmal. I actually hated it, and I hated the first Corsair that was added too. I'm starting to like it now a bit more. But what I'm doing here is I'm using it as not so much for close air support. Ideally, I'm using it because I want to spade it. And I guess this is good for two different reasons. Is it's a little bit faster to do, albeit you get a lot less RP, right? So when you're playing aircraft and ground battles, you get this reduced research point gain, because otherwise everybody would be spamming it. The good thing about it is that I was only missing 1 upgrade, so for getting one, the final kind of upgrades, I like doing it here because I'm going to end up in a plane regardless. I like playing planes and ground forces, I like the closer support role, and there's always something you can do with these planes. Strafe SPA, mark targets, go after enemy aircraft. And here I had a bit of an unfortunate case. I wanted to first drop a bomb in a head-on with a timer on the 262. I couldn't do that, so I turned into him and I just kind of force him into a stall fight, because that's where I'm going to be a little bit stronger off. I'm in a prop. Props are going to do stall fights a lot stronger, lower stall speeds. I can't really hit him. My aim is all over the place. I'm using stealth. This is outside my convergence, so I go sideways, doing the kind of normalization of convergence, and I get a lucky strike onto his engine. However, no critical hit, which means that if he crash lands, and I think he will later on, no kill gets assaulted. Now, the 82 Sky Raider here, beautiful play here, look at him. He's just dragging in a Focke-Wulf. Clean, simple approach. Bit of a tradey head-on there. Could have gone better. Corsair likes a flat spin. Not the best of engagements, trading 101, but that leaves an 82 Sky Raider in the sky, which could potentially do some damage. And we're now in a bit of a jiffy. Now, this is where I make a crucial decision, and a very, very stupid one. I choose to spawn the P51H in a game where we have no capture points. And that's exactly the reason why I spawned it. I thought to myself, this game is lost, we can no longer win it, so I'm going to spawn the P51H with no ordnance as a fighter. I'm going to go after that 262 if he repairs, and then we're going to lose the game, but at least I'm going to get a little bit of progression for this plane. funny, because this was probably the most self-centered, egotistical action I've done in a very, very long time in a game, and I did it deliberately because I thought to myself, there's no point, there's no way this team's going to bring it back. I was being very pessimistic. I dive down, I get some speed on the deck. Now you tell me if you can spot him. I'm blind, I don't see him. Tracers come firing in here, boom, 262 right in front of me. I had absolutely no clue he was in front of me. The guy landed, he repaired, and he came back strong. Bloody hell. Now we're in a problem. Now we're in a position where the only thing I can still spawn is an SPA. Now our team, somehow, I don't know through what magic, they just brought the game back from complete death. I feel a little bit responsible here because I didn't help my team out much. I've been self-centered, I've wasted all the spawn points, I'm not doing what I could be to maximize damage in this team. So, to redeem myself, I took the M42 Duster and I started going after the anti-aircraft role. But not just that, we're going to be pushing on as well. For now, I want to use that little bit of spawn protection I had, and I want to get used to the guns. This is the biggest problem with SPA. Every single SPA, in general, has different types of guns. And it takes a long time to learn where the lead for these guns is. That's why you're going to be usually seeing me in every single game I play. The first kill, before I get the first kill, my aim is all over the place. It's either short, it's long, it's mistimed. But as soon as I get that one strike in, every other kill just kind of falls into place. You can see that my aim is just slowly getting progressively better. And this is the way you should be playing SPA. It's the way it happens every single time. Your aim is based off of visual aid of the tracers. This reminds me a lot of that analogy that I used once when I was talking about, whether to use tracers or whether to use stealth. And the trick to stealth shells is that they don't show you where the shells are going, they don't show you where you're hitting, they just show you if you hit. With an if clause question at hand, we have to understand that with stealth, you're only seeing the shell effect if you're actually hitting the enemy aircraft, and it becomes a matter of muscle memory. Unlike tracers, on the other hand, they show you where the shell is firing, where the trajectory is. It shows you if the shells are falling short, if they're falling long. Tracers are extremely nice if you want to learn how the shells work, if you want to learn the trajectory of shells, the drop-off, if you want to understand how convergence is taken into effect. If you want to fool around and test this stuff out, take a P-51, take a P-47, something with wing-mounted guns, something with a lot of ammunition, load up tracers, and test fly a bit. You'll understand the way convergence works, try different settings, and you'll very quickly get the hang of it. But for me, I think stealth is the greatest shell because it doesn't alert the enemy that you're firing, it doesn't give them any idea how much you're leading, which means they don't even know where to evade. And for the person firing stealth shells, it just tells you if you're hitting the enemy aircraft, meaning it becomes a matter of muscle memory, and when you fly the same play the next time round, you don't have to think about what you're doing, or where you're leading, or why you're leading there, you just kind of do it. It's a matter of muscle memory and subconscious behavior. Now, transposing that to our SPA, everything uses tracers here. Even some of the belts in the game, like on the Kugel Blitz, they do in fact have stealth shells, almost, or, for example, I think the Falcon, with the newly added belts, also has not everything colored in tracer. It doesn't help much. Tracers are there in SPA because they want to help you how to lead. They tell you if the shells are falling short or if they're falling long. And this is important because it works the exact same way that a P-47 with tracers would. If you see that the tracers are passing in front of the enemy plane, that means you're leading a little bit too much. If they're passing behind the plane, you're leading not enough. And so you can always adapt this little technique until you see, of course, the hits start to come in. And the more SPA you play, and the more aircraft you face, and the more maps that you play them on, you'll realize that SPA have certain spots they can sit very safely on. There are certain ambush positions against planes you can hold, and most importantly, you'll understand at what given direction, or what given distance, you should start firing at the enemy plane. The worst thing you can do is you can sit in your spawn, far away from the battlefield, far away from your friendlies, far away from the enemy planes, and just shoot. What you're doing is you're actually dragging the enemy plane towards you, you're giving him attention. He knows where you are, and he knows your aim is pretty bad, because you're not hitting him. Let's be honest, at that distance you can't hit him. And you're giving the enemy the confidence, he's going to come nice and close, and he's going to throw a big, fat rocket at you, and you're not going to like it. So instead, try to move with your team. Now, if you're staying passive, stay behind your team's line. You know, you can stay a couple of tank distances. If you're feeling aggressive like myself in this game, you can push forward. I'm pinning down here a Tiger 2H. He can't kill me. I'm shooting the cannon barrel. I'm staying in the capture point. I'm uncapping his points. I'm shooting down the barrel, destroying that, making sure his turret is turned away from my teammates. I'm making it easy for everyone here, and I'm getting a load of points by doing a bunch of hits myself. The trick behind what I've just done is that I've taken an SPA, which costs about 150 spawn points to spawn, which is virtually nothing, because that was all I had. I had virtually nothing after my initial failure in the game. If somebody showed you the clip of the past 30 seconds and asked you, how did this game go from the get-go, you'd probably say that it was a guaranteed win, but it wasn't. You saw yourself at the beginning of the match, everything that could possibly go wrong, Murphy's Law, went wrong. We had no capture points. We had very little tank authority, we had very few planes in the sky, and we were being outrun in every single possible combination. And to add that little bit of a cherry on top of the cake here, an ME410 spawns in and decides to go head-on with me, giving me a free kill just before a T-44-100 finishes me off. That is 2 kills and 2 capture points in a vehicle that costs 150 spawn points. Now, of course, you know, this is a rare match. This is not going to be every single time you spawn an SPA in the game, and don't anticipate that it would be like that. The reason I'm showing it is precisely because of it, because it's an amazing feat of an achievement that you can bring a dead game back by playing an SPA very effectively. SPA are in the game because they're kind of the baseline. They're always available. It doesn't matter which BI you're playing, it doesn't matter which tank you spawn in first, unless it's a heavy tank and you die without doing any damage, you can always spawn SPA. They're always there availability. And I said this once on stream, SPA are almost like volunteers, but there's always that need to have at least one on the battlefield, either that or a plane. You need something that can maintain air superiority, or in that case, air clearance. So, when you're playing the game, the worst thing you can have the entire team in SPA, that's useless. Or you can have nobody in SPA. It's nice to have 1 or 2 players around the map just doing their job however well they can. Now, my favorite way to do this, or to get around this, would obviously be to use your SPA not just as sitting at the back of the map and, you know, going for planes, but also using it as a tank marker. You know, if you play it as a bit of a mixture, you can move forward, you can try to go for the capture points, which will give you massive amounts of RP, and the best part about it is that by pushing forward, you can mark enemy tanks. It works similar to strafing tanks in a plane. You strafe a tank, you spot him, your teammates finish him off, and you get a free assist. Do this a few times and you can get a massive amount of spawn points. You can then use those spawn points to bring back a game that you initially screwed up. And this is why I love the spawn point system. It works on a very simplistic basis. You have a lineup, you select the first vehicle you would like to play, likely the vehicle that is best fitted for the map or the teams that you're going to be facing, and after you've done some damage, a lot of damage, or no damage, you can then adapt the vehicles you're going to proceed to spawn next. Whether it's a plane, whether it's another tank, whether it's going to be an SPA, there's always something you can spawn in. And like I mentioned before, unless you're playing a heavy tank and you die without doing any damage whatsoever, which is down to your fault, you're always able to respawn something. Except for when you damage a Focke 490's engine and he ends up landing, aka crashing somewhere, and you don't actually get the kill. Not a problem though. You know, obviously it's going to be a little bit less research points for me, but at the end of the day, that's 1 Focke out of the match, which means his spawn points cannot go back into anything else but an SPA. And if I know anything about SPA players in this game, the Ostwind is going to be sitting in his spawn point, doing no damage whatsoever to the plane. And the reason why you lose when you sit in your spawn point with an Ostwind is because the enemy can simply fly over and over and over. They're keeping you busy and they're keeping you pinned. Every Ostwind that's sitting in its spawn is an Ostwind that could be sitting in the middle of the map, annoying, baiting, or taunting in some way, shape, or form the enemy team. And to kind of finalize this game, all we really had to do next was a 1v1 duel with a duck. Don't ask me why somebody's playing a duck in this matchmaker, but they are. And the game is already won. And one of the tricks to winning games is to eliminate players with the highest amount of spawn points first, let them respawn, and then rinse and repeat. Because of the spawn point system, because there's no, you know, there's a limited amount of vehicles you can spawn in, depending on how much damage you've done. I like to refer to it as a skill system, because players with most skill are going to have the most respawns. That's just how it goes. It's correlation. And so the most effective thing you can actually do, and a very, very fun one, is to focus on eliminating the players that have 0 spawn points. if somebody spawns a plane for, let's say, 1,000 spawn points, and they have 100 left, if you eliminate them without doing any damage, that person can no longer spawn in anything, not even an SPA. If the person spawned an SPA first, this was one of the matters of discussion for the previous patch, this was the kind of close air support spam beginning, which was where players would start with an SPA, rush into the capture point, bail out. If that person who bailed out of a capture point with an SPA respawned a plane, but proceeded to be taken out without doing any damage, that person is actually effectively eliminated from the match completely, because the only vehicle that they would be viable to spawn in because of the low spawn points would be the SPA, but they've already used the SPA early in the game. So unless they have a backup on the SPA, which likely nobody who was rushing close air support did, those players could be effectively taken out completely. And that's one of the reasons why I do in fact miss the old close air support. And to end on this note, I want to actually explain something that I've been asked a lot, which is, do I feel insulted because close air support got nerfed? A lot of players think that I've been, complaining about close air support being too nerfed or being useless because I can no longer do it. I want to shine a line to that by saying I've used close air support for one reason and one reason alone. It was to get God of War. And I got God of War. There's nothing there for me left to do with close air support. I exploited it completely. I got all the planes that I wanted to use spaded. There's just nothing left there for me to do. If I continued using close air support, it would be purely to bring back dead games. But there is something that is affected, and it's SPA. In the previous patch, SPA took a challenge to play because there were a lot of planes in the sky, and rockets, if they hit you, would one-shot you, and they could do that from a reasonable distance. And because of that, SPA was a challenge to play. It was reasonably difficult, and it took a certain amount of skill. I liked that, because it forced me to get better and better and better. But what's happened now is that close air support received a massive nerf. Half the vehicles that we used to use are now useless. Stuff like the M42 Skyraider is something that I don't even see a point in playing, because you could spawn in, waste all of your rockets on endless hits, and then try to drop the bombs, or maybe the Tiny Tims, to get 1 or 2 ground kills. SPA have been rendered overpowered and useless within the same patch. It's almost like they're easy to play, but players still don't know how to play them, which results in this kind of awkward seal clubbing on both sides. When I'm playing SPA, I feel like it's just simply too easy and a no-brainer. Or there's no planes in the sky, so I'm just driving around waiting for a plane to spawn in. And the fun part is that I've been paying attention to a lot of SPA players, and I've noticed the same things happening. Nothing's changed since the patch. You see, with the patch coming, close air support got nerfed, but SPA players are still the same. They're looking at the ground, they're shooting at tanks instead of looking at the sky. They're ignoring what's happening on the battlefield. They're sitting in their spawns, they're using their spawn protection. They're spraying from 5 kilometers away, hoping they're going to hit something. I think something I miss about the old system is the multiplication, which is, if we compare, let's say, a Shilka to a CL-13, a CL-13 could carry 16 rockets. HVAR, that would be 8 salvos. You could kill 8 tanks. 8 tanks is about as much of a multiplication as the spawn cost compared between the two vehicles. The Shilka is about 150, the CL-13 would be, usually around 1,000. So you could say that for the cost of one plane spawn, you could fit in 8 spawns of an SPA. Now, obviously, it doesn't work that way because every single time you spawn the same vehicle in, the cost actually goes up exponentially. But for the sake of the argument here, you could agree that, the cost of the Shilka compared to the cost of a plane is 1 to 8, somewhere around there. And obviously with the current patch, that ratio gets a little bit distorted because there's no plane in the game at the moment I could possibly count that could get reliably more than 3 ground kills, if we're excluding stuff with HVAP. There just isn't enough ammunition. You have about 2 bomb drops on average planes, unless you're flying a bomber, and bombers are very slow and cumbersome, so you want to be using a nimble fighter, like the Bearcat that I'm using here. Very, very easy to dispose of 2 heavy tanks using those 1,000-pound bombs. However, that's all I'm getting, is I'm getting 2 kills, and I'm limited to the amount of damage I can do. This doesn't affect mid-tiers that much. I think the current state of the game is actually really nice. This is why I said that I kind of like patch 1.71. I even asked you on Twitter if you like the patch. About 73% of you said that you did. I like the way that they've nerfed the damage of rockets, or rather they've made them historical. I do think that stuff like HVARs could receive a little bit more damage, because sometimes it's borderline impossible to use them. And I would like to see the accuracy reverted back to the original one. What they've done with accuracy, I think, is they've adapted the drop-off range so that it's a little bit easier to use these rockets, and it's actually making it a little bit harder. It's a little bit almost, I'm almost willing to say it's inhistorical, in the sense that the rockets don't drop off as much as they should. But maybe a discussion for a different day. To wrap this one up, I like the patch, I like the changes. I think the close air support rehistorical adaptation is not a bad one, but it will have effects, and it does have effects on top tier matchmaker. 8.7 at the moment isn't just being extremely annoying for people trying to play 7.7, 8.0 and 8.3. It's very annoying for players who want to use SPA and for people who want to use vehicles that used to be extremely good at close air support.